Mark, thank you so much for joining me today on the What is a Good Life podcast. This must be the most idyllic setting that I've interviewed someone in to date, with rays of sunshine and beautiful trees in the background. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes today.
Thanks, Mark. It's really nice to be here, and especially in such good company, considering all the guests you've had. I will say I'm really honored to speak with you. I've been watching what you've been doing for a long time, and this is really it's really an honor. So thank you.
I much appreciate that. So, as you're aware, we jump right in with, is there a question you're exploring as you move through life?
Very good question. Yes, there is. So for me, the big question for me is how do I go about this experience as me? Okay. So how do I go about this life being me, basically being me as a father, being me with the personality I have, with the talents I have or don't have, with the relationships I have. So how do I go about this experience as me? That's my big question. Yeah.
That's uh, that's one that resonates a lot. Can you tell me how you came to that question, or at what point you came to that question?
Okay, I can go back. So basically, we're born into a set constellation as children, right? In my case, that was being born into an Italian family in Canada. I was living in the English part, but speaking French. So having all these kind of, I'm not going to say contradictions, but all these types of things that came into my life that were chosen for me, right? And at one point, you realize that, and you say, okay, well, I'm someone, I'm me, but I have all these things that are stuck to me, right? Maybe I'm good at tennis, or maybe I'm good at piano, or maybe I want to be a politician, or whatever. And you have to examine kind of where these things come from, right? Have these been given to you just by being born in where you are, or were these learned, or are these really who you want to be? And at some point, we have to kind of look inwards and say, okay, well, what is it that really makes me me? What is it that really makes me want to give to the world, right? And so by examining what's been given to you or what you've grown up in versus what you really are, doesn't mean that you have to go against what's been given you, not at all. But you have to see what really is part of you and what's not part of you, right?
You said something there that I've never actually considered or tied together, the sentiment of being you and what you have to give to the world,
Yeah.
or even just, I think there's so much of this inquiry that people get caught in where it's just about identifying themselves, reducing what they might perceive as weaknesses, enhancing strengths, and things of this nature.
Hmm.
But I think there's something about, I don't want to make it something about purity, but there's an integrity, I think, to this path that kind of unfolds a bit of an inevitability, that if you do discover that it is just almost something that you get to share with the world. There's
Hmm.
something about the, like a commune with the world with that. Could you? I don't want to say that's your experience, but if, for you, even when did you think you kind of started to notice that that was actually something to share with the world, or that's a gift to the world in some ways?
Um, well, you see people all the time. I mean, you can see people giving all the time, and you can tell when they're really giving. And it's like when you watch if you watch a musician on stage, you can tell whether they're really giving, or whether they're just in it for themselves. You can tell in a second, right? And I think you can tell that in many different forms. Children are really good at pointing that out. If you've ever seen a child in the presence of any show or any adult supervision, you can tell right away they're going to size they're going to size them up right away, and say this is for real or this isn't. Um, for me, I grew up in a bit of a performatic family. My father was a musician, and I was able to see people in action giving themselves to others, right? And see right away what it took to be in front of people or with people, just sitting beside someone and really being there for them, as opposed to wanting to put something onto them, right? So looking back, that's probably where I realized that was seeing the people around me and seeing how when they would perform or when they would be with others, how they were just there. They were just there and they were just giving what was inside them to other people. And I think that can be in any situation, whether you're leading a team or whether you're with your friends or with your family. If you're really with someone, that person knows it because you're trying. You're open and you're not. There's nothing. there's nothing really to be said except just be there and be open, and see what flows through you, and through the other person as well.
It's amazing either when there's an attunement to that or an experience of it, there's something undeniable about it. Even how you say how a child could pick it up straight
Mm-hmm.
away. And with adults too, I think when there's an attunement to that,
Mm-hmm.
the world can seem rather funky when you when you have an experience of that, and then you go out into the maybe some of the generalized ways of behavior. From from your experience, just as your life has moved along, how is that question, like, where has that taken you? Were there moments almost where you felt like you were veering away from it, or moments where you
Mm-hmm.
felt you were going with it? Like, what comes to mind in that kind of sense?
So there's a plentitude of situations. I mean, I think life is. I mean, I've always also thought that life is always life is just a series of experiences to get to know myself better. Okay, that's basically what I went with it for a very long time. That was my main question, or my main kind of reason for being here. And so I've always thought that there is no real plan for your life. There was never a plan for my life either. And I've done some things that I've always surprised myself with the things I've done, because I've been just open to what the world was giving me and what the world wanted from me in that particular moment. I know I've moved over 30 times. I've had different careers, different jobs, different interests. I can remember being in the bus on my way to work. At the time, I was working in Switzerland in my 20s, and being on the bus and saying, my bus stop is next to get to work. I wish this bus would just keep on going. I don't feel like this anymore, right? And so one day I just said, well, that's it. The bus has to keep going, and I'm not going to stop off at this stop anymore. And so that career changed. Same thing with living in certain places. There's some people who say that home is where you feel, not where you're from, right? And I really believe that as well. So I've changed homes many times, based on intuition, based on what the world was giving me, based on green lights of situations versus red lights of situations, and just kept going based on that kind of that intuition. So I went off a little bit, but yeah, there's been many situations, schools, interests, careers, things like that, where you have to look around and think, is this still what I want? Is this still me? Is this still where I'm going? And then from there you can adjust, right? And it's important to listen to that and not stay anywhere that you think you need to be there, or this was my plan, this was my past, this brought me here. It doesn't matter, if we stay stuck in our stories of the past, then we'll never move anywhere, because we'll think that that's our reality, when our reality is just this. Like, our reality right now is just me and you having a conversation, right? I don't know where this is going to go. You might, but this is just our reality. It's just this right now, right?
Yeah, I definitely don't know where it's going to go, but you're saying, that's a beautiful question though to ask yourself in any moment. Is this still me?
Hmm.
There's like, there's a sense of it, of I don't know, the intimacy of really never knowing something fully, if you get me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Even myself, a partner, like, we're changing all, like, change is happening all the time in some ways.
Hmm.
The unknown is always there with us. For you, was there ever a point where this was like a market difference in your life, or like, did you? I know you're mentioning there, even in your 20s on the bus on the way to work, but
Hmm.
did this always feel somewhat natural to you, or did you?
Well, it's hard, right? Nobody wants
Yeah,
change. It's a part of life, but nobody wants to radically change things. But if you really, this is, I think life is a path of courage, and courage is listening to yourself, right? That's what the ultimate courage is, I think. And like you said, not knowing, when you have this kind of beginner mind all the time, you are always open. It's like when people say, "I'm so lost," and I say, "Well, when you're lost, you notice things. That's kind of good, right? When you're lost in the city, you'll start to notice things, or look around and see where you are, and that's really interesting. That's when you go somewhere new." I can remember in 2018, for instance, we were living in Barcelona, and we had really we had jobs, we had busy lives, and this and that. And then we decided, this isn't what we want. This is not. I'm not happy. I'm not. This is not me anymore. This is not. This phase has obviously ended. So we decided to sell a lot of our belongings, and we moved, and we went to a remote island on the Pacific coast of Canada. which we'd been for a few days earlier, but on this very strong intuition that we had to do it, we had to do it, and that started off a whole new life for us, me as well. And that was an example where we said, this is just the reality we have right now. It doesn't make any logical sense in modern life, but this is what we want to do. And so this is what we did. We left and we sold everything. We lived in a very remote island where there was, we had to, I mean, we used rainwater. I mean, it was an elaborate system, but still, we used rainwater. We had to chop wood for the winter, things like that. And what that did is it made us realize that, well, not right away. It was quite hard at first, but eventually, what it realized is basically two things. Is one, um, we're really here to be compassionate and empathetic to others. And I learned this firsthand. Where on this island, I made a rule for myself where if somebody asked for help, I had to give it. Just as a way to experiment with life a little bit, because there's a lot of help needed. There are a lot of people who needed help. There's always something. Because when you live on a very rustic kind of like hands in the earth kind of life, there's always something to help with. There's always something to do. Nature is demanding, right? And the second one is we're here to be creative. Creative in the sense of how we live. If we're here to if, like I live in the forest here, right? There's always something creative to think about, to create, to make. Whether it's a woodshed or a tree that needs something, or there's always something to build, right? Also, in terms of creativity, otherwise, I mean, if you look at, we've always been creative beings, right? And whether it's through music or writing or telling a story or dancing or anything, that's what we're here to do. So this experience in the forest in Canada taught me those two major pillars: is empathy and creativity. And when you have those two as kind of like these guardrails in your life, it makes things a little bit easier. You know.
Geez, man, that's I love when people come to some sort of understanding when it's so clearly lived. Do you know what I mean? And
Mm.
it's not a theory, but it's the experience of having lived a sentiment, a feeling, a notion about this life. For you, just before you did that, and even made the move to Canada, did you have like, was there an experience you had in nature for an extended period of time? Were you like, was this something that was brewing, or was this a sudden call, or how did you experience it?
So I did. I grew up in Canada. I'm Canadian, so I grew up in Canada, and I had always had nature as a access to nature. I grew up in a suburban environment, but we had a forest nearby, which means that I had that refuge whenever I wanted it. And I didn't know it was a refuge when I was a kid. All I knew is that when I took my bicycle as a young boy and went into that stretch of forest, something happened. I remember I would stop in the middle of the forest. I would look up and I'd see the canopy of trees and feel something. I didn't know what it was back then. Now I know it was just peace, right? But back then I had no idea what it was. But on my way to my friend's house, I had to go through the forest and I would stop and just kind of feel it, like, wow, this is so quiet, this is so cool. And then I'd keep going. And that was it. Like, like switching the channel on the TV. That was one thing. And I remember as a really young boy, when I was very, very, very young, probably in kindergarten, I remember going for a walk one day with my class and we used to hold hands with a partner, right? And we walked through the forest once, and I remember feeling something. I remember feeling very small, and feeling that I was kind of wrapped in this kind of like invisible blanket. And I remember like it was yesterday. I remember the feeling. I must have been 4 years old, and standing there and saying, "Wow, this is really something." And I didn't know what that was, obviously, either. And I was very, very young. And then later in life, we live in cities, we do things we need to do, and we have the careers we have, and the modern lives that we have. But I always remember those moments, as key moments. And I've had them. I mean, I've had it by the sea, I've had it in other natural environments, but I never really connected it until we went to this island again. And I said, I remember this. I remember this feeling. I remember this feeling of being completely whole within a bigger experience. And I mean, I've had other experiences from, in spiritual nature. I've been to ashrams and things like that, and other spiritual experiences. But this very earth, feet on the ground nature experience, I think, was important. And another thing you said, which I liked, is that having lived experience, I think, is really, really important, because in the realm of like conscious living or spirituality, things like that. I'm somebody who's very, very practical. I like things to be practical, things to serve me, right? If somebody says try this method, I'm going to try it, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna set it aside. I mean, there's so many. Like if you see people, if you say God's a man, show him to me. Where is he? Like these are things that are important. That we're here to live an experience, and this experience, I want to live it as full as I can. So these tools or these things, people that we have need to be tested always. So if I say to somebody, come spend the weekend here in the forest, I will give them tools, or I'll tell them practices that I think work, right? Because I've tested them, and I think that's important. What we read, what we see, what we experience has to be always a tested experience for yourself, because we're all different. Not everything works for everybody, right? Some people come here and they can't take it. It's just too quiet. It's just too remote, and that's fine. And there's nothing. That's their nervous system. That's their body. They need something else, obviously. So yeah. So lived experience is important. You have to live things through the body to be able to incorporate them into your life afterwards. I think that's super important too.
You mentioned something around the sentiment, or even just the sense, or the fact that you sold everything and arrived there, and I assume empty-handed. Then, obviously, with some savings to acquire some more
Mm-hmm.
things. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember, I actually lived in Vancouver once, and before I was leaving a finance job and kind of leaving that industry, I took off to Peru. I remember sending one. I was never massively material, if you know what I mean, but I had one suitcase which I sent back to my family home in Ireland, and I had a rucksack on my back, and that was literally everything I owned, like just one moderately sized suitcase and a rucksack. And there was something about that just felt so liberating, like
Mm-hmm.
that. I felt so light-footed, if you get
Mm-hmm.
me. And just the way you're describing certain things there around just saying that like nature is demanding and you need to be creative. It feels like there's so much about, and I'm not ragging on the whole culture and everything else. Everyone can make up their own minds on that. But I just mean there seems to be so much that would get in the way of coming into contact with some of the things that you're suggesting. Like
Mm-hmm.
even just the heaviness of all the things that we're supposed to do or supposed to acquire, or even the, I don't know, the predictability or the safety of this life that would keep you. Because I've never heard someone say that nature is very demanding, but the
Mm-hmm.
moment you said it and you're in a situation where you're living with and responding to it, you're not insulated
Mm-hmm.
from it. A
Mm-hmm.
sentiment like that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the forest doesn't want me here. Let's be honest. I mean, if I leave, no, it's true. If I leave the garden for a week, it's gone. It's there's no more garden. There's tree roots that are uprooted that break foundations. I mean, the forest doesn't want me here. So for me, it's always a balance between living with nature, saying, look, I'm gonna guard this. I'm gonna be the guardian of this area, and I'll do my best not to disturb it too much. Right. So it's about finding solutions to keep that balance here. If I don't touch anything, there'll be a perfect balance here. It doesn't need me here, right? So how can I live here and be of service and help and not disturb things too much so we can live in harmony in this way. And that's what I mean by nature is demanding. Nature is demanding on if you want to live really in it, it's something you have to, because we have human needs for shelter, for warmth, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, we heat for instance, we heat the house with firewood, right? So I'll go around and I'll remove dead trees. Basically, I won't cut any trees down, but there'll be trees that'll just die automatically. I'll take those trees. I'm doing a service to the forest. I'm preventing forest fires. I'm preventing this tree from hindering that, and I'll heat the house with it, for instance, right? So I'm always trying to find a way to live here in a way that doesn't disturb too much, because the forest doesn't want us here. It doesn't. It wants to live its own. So we have to find a way to live with it, right? So I don't mean demanding in the sense that it's taxing. I just mean demanding in the sense that there's certain things from me that I can give to it that maintains that balance, right? And when you said you were feeling freed with the backpack on your back, it's just the greatest feeling, because that feeling for thousands of years. That's what we did, right? We were just there, wandering, gathering, wandering, and obviously we don't live like that anymore, and I don't think we should either. but that there's a feeling, there's a remembrance there that we have, and it's in a lot of things. If we make a campfire outside and we have just young kids by the campfire, they remember that. They'll sit there quietly and just watch the fire, and it's amazing. It happens every time because they remember that there's something in them. There's a DNA. It's in their DNA, right? Their ancestors. It's in their bones. It's in the fibers of their being that they remember that sensation. When we do things in the forest with kids as well, and with adults, same. They go in the forest and something, there's a stillness that just happens right away because they remember that feeling, right? At the same time, like I said, sometimes people come here and they can't handle it. They'll see an ant in a bedroom and won't be able to handle it. And well, that's the way it is. We're in the middle of the forest, there's this, but because we've forgotten that, there's nothing to be afraid of. This is just part of us. Everything we see, all these natural elements here that we see are just part of us, including this fly that just landed on my forehead. So
Perfect timing.
yes. So yeah, so that's what I meant by that, by nature being demanding, is that it doesn't want me here. It doesn't want me to do this. So I have to find ways to live with it, you know.
You mentioned when you first moved to this remote island that it took some adjustment.
Yeah.
I really like the I'd really like to know more just to what that adjustment felt like and what that entailed.
Well, when you leave things behind, you miss them, right? We left our friends, our families, our jobs, our possessions. I had a guitar, had some clothes, so we missed a lot of things. We also felt for our daughter at the time was 4 years old, and she all of a sudden, like, where's life? Like, we go to the beach, there's nothing, it's just the beach. There's nothing here. So that was something. Also, the weather was quite challenging. It was very. I'm from Canada, but I'm from the East Coast where it's sunny. This was very cloudy, very dark, very windy. Um, very taxing on the vitamin D situation. So it was that was difficult. The adjustment of not at night just having a fireplace. That was our entertainment. We have a fireplace in front, a wood stove in front of us, and that's what we would look at. And so it took some adjustment of how to live this way, right? I was thinking, wait a second, half my day now is going to go towards chopping wood, or it's going to be finding wood, or things like that. So we had to find different ways to entertain ourselves, I guess, which is also sounds, when I say it now, it sounds ridiculous, because we don't need any entertaining. When you know when you're grounded and when you're somewhere, you don't need entertaining. But we were coming from a more urban environment where we're used to being entertained all the time. And so moving there also showed us, like, wait a sec, you don't need that much entertainment. And all the entertainment's around you. We can build things. We can just go for walks as a family. We can explore things. There's water, there's beach, there's a lot to do. So that was an adjustment. But what happened eventually, there was kind of a point where this tipped. And so sitting by the fire at night became writing by the fire at night, or became playing music by the fire at night. Going to the boring beach, that our child used to call it, became building bridges on the boring beach, or exploring different things like that. And then there was a third part of the experience, which became a really creative period. So my partner and I have a band, and we composed our third album when we were on the island, and it became kind of like this I guess you could call it an artifact of this experience, where it's a little bit of a haunting album, but beautiful at the same time, just like the experience. The experience was a little bit haunting at times, but also beautiful. So there's like these three phases. There was a phase of complete nothingness, like we said, my God, what did we just do, right? There was a second phase of just kind of like, wait a second, I can do this. I can sit outside at night and listen to the owls or the sea lions that I could hear at the beach from the balcony. And then the third stage was, well, what can I make out of this, right? And that for me is kind of the experience of being in a rewilding experience, like I am here. Like, you have this opportunity to be very, very creative, and then because there's silence, and you have this kind of protection around your thoughts, where you're gonna go deep, and you're gonna find things that you want to talk about, or give to the world again, because you feel them again, right? We're not. I find sometimes when we're in modern life, with all the distractions and the needs and the requirements, we kind of tune out from that, and we just become these kind of in a very robotic mode, which is fun at times, but it makes us forget sometimes what we're really about.
There's something so satisfying to the stages of almost progression that you mentioned there.
Hmm.
Like what the hell are we going to do?
Yeah.
Then settling into that, even just like it just seems like a deeper awareness. And then with that, with that almost relaxation, the inevitable creativity or curiosity arises. Just wondering, like, were there moments when you're, because I think you said to me before, was it Bowen Island or
It was Hornby Island. Yeah.
Hornby Island? Sorry.
Yeah.
But just like really like I could imagine just being pitch dark at night.
Yeah.
Very little activity. I visited it once
Mhm.
before, very briefly, and I don't know. Like, was there a moment where, like, was there fear even going from an urban thing to situation to being at night in that darkness? Like, how did you receive it? If you know what I mean?
Yeah, there was. It was definitely dark. There was one stop sign on the whole island, and there was no street lamps. So I remember going to there was a community center, there was a main hall where they have activities once in a while, and we go to the hall, and then to drive back to our house was just forest and darkness. And I remember thinking, wow, and you'd see a deer once in a while or something, but even that would be a little bit surprising. And that was really, yeah, that was haunting. That was scary, of course. But then what would happen is that eventually you notice the stars. You could see stars from directly in front of you, directly behind you. There's a helicopter that's going to pass here. So, so that was. Just wait here for a second. Let's take a little stillness break as the helicopter passes by. So all those moments of scare of horror, of not horror, but of those haunting moments eventually switched, and we started to like those little haunting moments. We started to think like, ooh, isn't this special, or isn't this interesting? I remember coming home one day. We were 3 ferries away from the mainland, and one night we'd flown back from visiting my parents at Christmas, and we came back to the house, and the house was absolutely frozen, just like we haven't thought about that. Just asked somebody to make a fire for us before we got home, and the house, we could see our breath in the house. It was just really, really cold, and we had to put on every blanket we owned and sit on a couch while I made this fire. And that became one of the best memories we had of the island. That night we came back and froze in the house, right? But there are moments, yeah, there's moments where we cried a lot. We'd be in the. I remember walking some days. Esther and I would walk to the shore just to have a walk, and we just cry. I say, "Why are you crying?" I say, I don't know why I'm crying either, but we are. We just cried because it was just new and strange and spooky. But there was something in us that said, "You got to do this." You've heard this many times from people who do interesting things, where you just have to do it. You know this is something that's bigger than you, and you have to do it. So we did it, and we went, and we healed a lot there too. We healed a lot of wounds we had inside from all these. We really connected with our inner children again, and all this kind of thing, and healed that, and it was a beautiful experience, and we were never the same after. We came back to Barcelona, came back to Spain, and we were just different, and not in a bad way, but we recognized that and said, okay, well, what does this mean now, right? And so it meant looking for something similar, and then we ended up finding selling again something we had, and buying this property here, which is in the middle of the forest, and very much uh, like that Canadian experience. But I would say even a little bit wilder than that Canadian experience, in that we don't have any neighbors here. We had a neighbor on the island a little bit, not too far away, but here we really have no immediate neighbors. We're really, really on our own, which is interesting too. Also a little bit scary, not as Waldeny as people think. There's a lot of there's a lot of there's a lot of unexpected things, but I mean, it's hard to have superfluous thoughts when you're dealing with a clogged pipe, or when you're chopping wood, or when you're just in it. You're in that moment, and that's like a protection. And I feel very fortunate to have those little moments where I'm really, really involved with my hands, and my vision for what this place can be, because that really protects me from distractions and wanting things, and this and that. And I'm really there. So yeah, I veered off a little bit, but that was yeah. So there's definitely some spooky moments there. Yeah.
No, that was perfect. Honestly, the the sentiment though, or the experience of, kind of haunting moments, but also the acknowledgement of being able to see a star almost directly in front
Mm-hmm.
of you and all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of being in some places in the world, coming home late at night where there was very little light pollution,
Mm-hmm.
and having just lived in cities the vast, nearly like 95% of my life. Um, there's something so I don't know. It's like being held by the stars, that they give you some sense of where you're going,
Yeah.
or some kind of sense of belonging or connection to it all. So I find that really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, because we remember. We remember what it was like to sit in the stars and watch. We did that for thousands of years. It's not too. It's just recently where we've been huddled in these little cities where we don't see the sky anymore, right? Because of light pollution or whatever. And the thing is too, when you have that access to those natural elements, you remember that that this is just a big cycle, right? We're always in these cycles. Like now we're in we're in the autumn cycle of the year, and it takes the autumn cycle is an interesting one. It's interesting because you're between the life and bright light and abundance of summer and the death of winter, where nothing grows, things are quiet. And where I'm from in Canada, that's just a tundra. There's just snow everywhere. There's literally nothing. It's just death. So autumn is that in between season, where you're kind of in this liminal space where you're going towards death, basically. The gardens will die in about a month. There'll be no more that hot sun. So it's you notice that nature's cycles are our cycles as well, and we've completely disconnected from that as well. I just know when you live, and I've lived in big cities, and I love big cities. I really do. They're places of innovation, of arts, of it's amazing. However, we've become disconnected from the cycles of life and nature. And when you live in a natural space, you remember that. Like last night, there was this enormous supermoon, right? And the kids were agitated. Nobody wanted to sleep, and this and that. I'm not saying it's directly related to that, but that for sure has an imprint on them. I mean, same thing with the seasons, the cycles of the moon, the cycles of nature, and inside we have our own cycles as well. We live life. Life is always renewing. It's always changing. And there's nothing wrong with somebody who has followed a linear space their whole life. And frankly, I admire those people that they have that vision and that strength to do that. But you can also live in a way that's more in tune with the cycles of nature, of the seasons, and that to recognize that also helps you, because it says, okay, well, if I'm feeling like this today, maybe it's not entirely something that I did. It's just the way it is. It's a windy day. It's a dark day. The trees are bent. Well, if I'm a little bit bent as well, it's kind of normal, right? So that's another interesting thing. So when you do see the stars at night, like you said, there's a remembering, and there's a pause that happens, and there's a feeling that you're part of something greater, right? Because it's what I mean. It is. We are a part of nature. We are nature. I mean, that's what we are. We're made of it. I mean, we're it's the same sources. So that remembering is can be very powerful, and kind of a protection as we go about our days as well.
I think that's nature and being in places where you are. I think that becomes abundantly clear, and I think if our attention is there, even in cities, we get to, you still see the tree, you still see the leaves
Mhm.
changing and falling on the ground and decaying. Um, Even just the observation of people, I think, and whether it's the clothes that they're wearing. I have a next door neighbor, I think he must be in his 70s, when I always think summer has truly arrived when he wears his denim cutoffs,
Mhm.
rather tight fitting pair of pants that always gives me a smile.
Yeah, yeah.
And But I think there's something about that observation of that change outside of us.
Mhm.
As you say, whether it's a rainy day today or a sunny day today, I think it makes it far more accepting of ourselves if we can just see that change and our lack of, okay, we can have preferences, and whatever else, but our lack of judgment for the changes that go on outside of us. I think it requires us to be, and even going back to that initial question of how do I go about this life as me, it requires that me to be, it gives it so much more flexibility or space.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
think
of
that's
course.
something that I find really kind of welcoming about some of these observations.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's simple too. I mean, when it's a rainy day, do you feel like going outside? No, of course you don't, because we never went outside. We stayed in our caves, or we stayed in a shelter when it rained. Right now, because of the way we live, we got to go to work. So you get in the rain and you go out there and you get there and you're not in a good mood. Well, it's normal. These are just normal things. And And yeah, when we live that way, we see that. I mean, yeah, yeah, it's anyway, yeah, cycles of life, yeah, cycles of nature. It's an interesting way to live.
When you mentioned earlier the sentiment of exploring inner child and wounds
Mm.
with your partner, and when you came back to Barcelona, it was just very clear that you both just felt you were very different. Just curious from your perspective, because I often hear, always almost if somebody starts to have an inquiry and their partner doesn't, that can actually cause
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
friction. And I'm I'm not saying from my own personal experience if you're
yeah,
both exploring things that it's just a bed of
yeah,
roses either. But could you talk to me about the significance maybe of even both people exploring or having that inclination? And even just touching on that sentiment of what did you notice, just even from your own perspective, that was different in yourself
yeah,
once you arrived back in Barcelona?
yeah. I mean, in terms of relationship, for me, it's, I mean, the relationship is the same as any other relationship. I can't give to my relationship unless I've given to myself first. Okay. So what happens with us is that there's growth that happens within each people, each person, and it needs to be communicated as a couple as well, right? So what's important for us is that we have time to share together. Always have time to share together, and we put it as time to share. You know, we share a lot because in a relationship, the communication is just so fundamental, right? And it's not even anything you need to communicate specifically, just to sit there. And even if you don't say anything, just be there with your partner, and something will come out that's real, right? So, because if you growth happens at different times. I mean, if I look around here too, I mean, the trees grew at different times as well, but they're all, you know, if you look behind me, they're all kind of leveled out. So if you're living in close connection with your partner, there's a way to grow consciously together, and that's to first honor yourself. Always honor yourself first, because you can't give unless you're full. You can't, same with my children, I can't give anything to them unless I've taken care of myself first. And there's some, so you gotta really, and whatever that is for you, if it's jogging, if it's meditating, if it's going for a walk, I don't know, whatever, people have different things, but if you feel full, you can give to others, right? Because if you live from that way in your relationship, then there's not even there's no more levels. You're just giving all the time, right? You're just there, available to them. And then whether you will grow from that intuitively, and the same thing from the other way. The other person will feel that from you and will give back to you as well. So growth will automatically kind of happen at the same time. So that's been something that I learned there as well, was that this whole kind of rewilding experience meant being in touch with myself first, and going for long walks, and just figuring out, what I need to, that makes me full. What fills me. What activities fill me. What makes me full. And once I figured that out, then I was able to give myself that time, and then I was available, open, giving, compassionate. Because I could. And yeah, and then upon returning to Barcelona, we yeah, I felt obviously different. So it was, it was an adjustment to see just friendships. Friendships are. I mean, if you read the book Siddhartha, I don't know why it came in my head now, but years ago, I read it when I was 20. But there's a point in the book where there's somebody who he crosses the bridge with, right? Remember that part?
Mm.
And so for
I've literally got a copy of the book over on a shelf here. Yeah, yeah.
it's a
It's one
great
of the few books I have in my office here.
Yeah, it's a great book. But there's a point where Siddhartha has to cross a bridge, and somebody crosses the bridge with him, and then the person disappears. But that's friendship, right? Friendships are like that. So they help. They're with you in parts of your life, and then you make other friendships based on experiences that you need and have. So we had to that kind of happened when we came back. Some friendships, well, we've crossed some bridges with them, and we made new friendships, and still love all our friends, but some that changed a little bit. So yeah, and I always like the comparison to the saying, like, life is just like a bus ride, right? You see things out the window, somebody sits next to you, they get off at a stop, you get off at the next stop. The driver can be whoever. You can think about that metaphor for a while if you want. But and that's basically what happened, is that the person next to him changed spots in the bus a little bit, but still just looking out the window, observing what's happening, and so yeah, so the return to Barcelona was that, and it's still happening. I mean, we welcome people more here, but things change, and we change, and but we stay at the same time very very together on this vision, and as a couple we stay very aligned, and by because we're full, we fill ourselves first, and then we're able to give to the other person, right? Yeah.
It's, I haven't moved as many times as yourself, but I've moved enough times to kind of have maybe a little bit of a different perspective on friendship. It's interesting the way you put it there,
Mhm.
and even just that sentiment when inevitable growth happens in us, or when we give it space for it to occur, how some things just don't fit or resonate the way that they did. And
Mhm.
not down to anyone's doing, it's just, that's just the way it is. But there is something, I think, rather delightful about there's a making that kind of understanding around friendship. I think it opens us up to meeting a lot more people. I think it puts
Mhm.
almost less pressure on the friendships that we have. And I
Mhm.
don't know what the experience is like if I live in the same place all my life and there's a
Yeah.
continuity there. But friendship is something that definitely changes shape, or
Uh-huh.
um, my relationship with it changes when I've moved several times.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the source of knowing that you can trust your life, that your life will give you who you need when you need them, right? And I don't say need them in a transactional sense, but need them in terms of maybe to serve somebody, to learn something, or maybe you need to just be with somebody because they have some message, or just to be with someone in general. And this trusting life it permeates everything. Any vision you have, anything you'd like to do, life gives to you. The universe will give to you if you're really living what you want to live and need to live. The world will help you. It always will, right? And it will help you with people. It will help you with resources. It will help you with ideas, creativity. But it's this trust in life that needs to be there. That life will give you what you need always. Life provides, and I really, really believe that. It won't always provide. It will provide you situations that are difficult because you need them to. But it will provide you what you need always, right? I think that's the distinction sometimes that people forget, is that life, you can trust life that it will put you in tricky situations, and I've been in tricky situations as well, but they have been put there for a reason, always. So you can relax because everything's kind of, just you can just trust your life, because you'll make the decision you need to make if you really listen and you really live from a conscious space, and from that place of curiosity, and wanting to know and wanting to meet, and really kind of like being tuned in. You can relax because life will provide, and you can trust that life will put people on your path that are there to provide with you, or walk with you, or just accompany you sometimes, relationships, friends, colleagues. So uh, there's no um, there's no need to fear them, you know, because there's always something to. I'm always curious, for instance, about. I mean, when I go into this city, sometimes when I go into Barcelona, massive city, a lot of people, and I'm on the subway. I want to talk to everybody all the time, because I'm not,
Yeah.
'cause I'm mostly isolated here. So like, wow, is that a saxophone in that case, or oh, cool sneakers? I want to talk to everybody, because everything, and sometimes I do, you know, um, sometimes I don't, but because there's that trust of like everything. I always feel like everything's been put here for. It's like a big playground, it's a big fun place to discover. I mean, look at this. It's just like what I get into this trip now, but it's amazing. It's like, think about it. Like what are we doing right now? This is really amazing that we're doing this, or that we're just having this conversation, or that I'm just alive. Sometimes I'm like, look at this body I've got. It's like a space suit. I put this on every morning. I just go out and explore this amazing universe. Like, it's crazy, So and when you live in that curiosity and that kind of like joy of just being, it can be a marvelous experience. So yeah.
Oh man, I love everything you're saying there. It resonates so strongly, and just that sense of being able to relax when you have that level of trust in life.
Hmm.
Um, and it's really not to say that there won't be any difficulties or challenges.
Yeah.
But it really, in my experience, and some of the things I chatted to you before about, of things that I'll probably need to get in order in my own, meeting the practicalities of life.
Uh-huh.
I'm stunned that while I'm tending to them, it doesn't come with some debilitating sense of stress.
Mm-hmm.
There's an energy that is required to meet certain requirements, if you know what I mean. But
Mm-hmm.
it still gives so much space to be curious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just that thing you said there about the trust in life and I think that's a beautiful connection to make. The trust in life, and then the capacity just to view whatever situation you're in as there's an opportunity even for connection within that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why wouldn't I talk to everyone on the subway?
Yeah.
Like I've mentioned several times before in this podcast, even my experience of living in Berlin, what could be considered a cold city, and saying hello to everybody, or like Guten Morgen, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and just knowing lots of people in my neighborhood now, like that it just
Yeah.
feels like a real neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I think that possibility, we get such strong images and such fixed images of what things are.
Uh-huh.
But I think just what you've touched on there is there's something fundamental that just makes this life so kind of malleable. So
Mm-hmm.
I think every moment is kind of endowed with some sense of possibility or curiosity, even if it's resistance, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow, I'm feeling this right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always from the space you're coming from, right? There's a in the Hindu tradition they'll say there's a sattvic and a tamasic space, right? So when you're in this bigger sattvic space, or this space of more expansion, then it's all just a beautiful orchestra. It's all just beauty, and things make sense. And I don't want to get all cloudy, because I don't really like that kind of talk, but it's that every moment becomes its own little universe. There's these little series of moments uh, that become interesting, and curious, and when you realize that, that there's no need for a big plan in life. If you tend to all these little moments with a very conscious energy, conscious space, being in it, being curious, being available, being of service, then things work out fine. you know Things we forget, and we get in this kind of like, oh, I need to do this to do that, and if this happens, that will happen, and then okay, then but that never works, because life just doesn't work that way. Life is the way it is, and we have is all these little series of moments, and even our life is just a moment. This 75, 80 years that we live is just a moment, in the grand scheme of things anyway. So if we, in our little tiny kind of like the way we live, our little moments are also this, we're the universe, and those are little moments that we can tend to, right? And that becomes very, very special when you can live that way. Like you were saying, every little moment becomes opportunities for growth, and opportunities to feel, and if we can feel, there's a reason we can feel things, or else we wouldn't feel things. So if we can feel things, it's a way of navigating our world. That's what it means to be human, is to feel things. And once you feel something, it doesn't become that bad anymore. Like when something really hurts, and you go in there and you feel it, and you look at it, and you poke at it, it doesn't hurt. It just becomes interesting, and it just becomes an experience or a moment that happens. Same thing with a thought. If you have a thought that's not that desirable, if you just kind of look at it for a while, say, okay, let's check out this thought, let's poke at it, let's look at it, let's have a moment with this thought right now, right? And then the thought doesn't feel so bad anymore. The thought kind of, and it'll just kind of just dissolve, and pass like a cloud. So yeah, the attention to moments, or attention to, it depends the space you're coming from always. If you're in a stressed out space where you're just kind of like at the very necessity level, and you're just going through it, and it'll feel awful. And it comes back to, again, what I was saying earlier, to just taking time for yourself. You need to, being in that space is not easy. But actually it is easy. You just need to keep to be regular, to be a discipline, and and to allow yourself to get into that space, whatever it means for you, and then go about your day. And, oh, I flipped up. Okay, back into that space again. And I think too about discipline, and I think it's very, very important, discipline. And people don't like that word, but I think it's a beautiful word, discipline, because in discipline is the word disciple, right?
Hmm.
And to be a disciple of something is an honor. I mean, if you look at an athlete, a basketball player is a disciple to physical conditioning, right? To be as an amazing actor or actress is being the disciple to emotional connection, right? So when you're disciplined, when you're practicing something over and over and over, you're a disciple to something in your life that really matters to you, right? So I'm here, I guess I could say I'm a disciple to nature, or to spiritual discipline, because I like it, right? That's my discipline. I get up in the morning and I meditate. I do my breathing, and that puts me in that space where I can be open to the world after, right? You hear the athletes say amazing things sometimes, like, wow, what a beautiful, beautiful thing to say. About growth, about determination, because they've been disciples to something for so long that they live it, and they can speak from that space. So so yeah, so being in that space for how to have those moments needs discipline. It needs the ability to tap into that source of yours that allows you to be in those moments so consciously and so openly, right?
It sometimes baffles me the sentiment that you could come across as almost a bit wavy or wishy-washy. That you might say that it's not a plan; it's paying attention to now,
Mm-hmm.
because I just can't think of anything that could lead to a potentially more beneficial or favorable outcome or possibility than paying attention to now. Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
whether that's my relationships, whether that's something that I'm working on, or
Hmm.
whatever it might be. I'm just intrigued as to, you come back to Barcelona, you then decide to get this property with no neighbors. What was the intention even with this property? And you're mentioning inviting people
Hmm.
in. Sometimes their nervous system can take it, sometimes they can't.
Hmm.
But that kind of invitation for people to experience life
Hmm.
and almost remember, it sounds.
Yeah.
Just how did that come about for you?
So because we had this experience on the island, this kind of, I call it a rewilding experience. I really wanted people to have this experience as well. So what we do is I want people to have it here. So we created a space here, a rustic but comfortable space where people can have that experience. So people can come out of their lives and come here and experience what it is to be in a natural environment, in quiet, to be with your thoughts, to be with yourself, and see if you can get back to that space of compassion and creativity, like I mentioned earlier. Sometimes people come for specific reasons. Somebody has an operation coming up, they're stressed out. Somebody has a broken heart. Somebody has a work situation, or somebody just has time and wants to work on a project. Right. I wanted people to be able to come here and feel safe, that they can be with themselves, and just see what happens after a few days or whatever it is. Um, and because you're mentioning, yeah, something wavy too, because for me, conscious living, spirituality, it's very practical. These are practical things. There's no reason why you can't go into an office and be spiritual. You can treat every interaction with somebody as a sacred conversation. You can. Doesn't mean you have to talk about God or nature. You can talk about anything. But there's a way of approaching this that you can that you can still be conscious, right? And for me, that's super super important. Yeah.
With the initial inquiry of kind of how do I go about this life as me, both with myself as a father in relationships, that beautiful moment I think where it comes about what can I give to the world, like, and then treating life almost as a series of experiences, and you know almost like getting that give you an opportunity to get to know yourself better.
Hmm.
This clearly continuous attentiveness to life, in the sense of even on that bus ride into work in Switzerland, and just even the image or the thought coming to you of what if I weren't to get off at this stop,
Hmm.
the metaphor that's in within that, treating so many circumstances, or with that inquiry of, is this still me? You said this beautiful thing as well, that courage is really the willingness to listen to yourself.
Hmm.
I think that's a particularly kind of profound sentiment. And then realizing that when there's time and space, the significance of compassion and creativity in one's life, that
Hmm.
there's always somebody to help, and
Always. Yeah.
if there's space, there's always the possibility of creativity as well.
Hmm.
And just all this really culminating, I think, in this really strong sense of you trusting your life, and that the world can be seen and felt and experienced a certain way.
Hmm.
Really curious to ask you, Mark, the question of what is a good life for you?
So, what is a beautiful life? A beautiful life is a feeling. It's a feeling inside that you are living um, in a way that the outside is connected to the inside. It's a feeling that you are cared for in the bigger scheme of things. It's a feeling that you are walking on stable ground. It's a feeling that the people who surround you are there to support you. And lastly, I see a beautiful life is a life where you can sit down and not need anything. For me, that's a beautiful life. I'm not saying I have it yet, but that is a beautiful life.
If it's something you don't have, I'm sure there's components. All of those components have been experienced at some stage within
Mm.
it, and I'm sure quite frequently from how you're describing your life. And Mark, I've rarely heard someone describe it in such a way that would resonate as strongly as that with I sense how I perceive life as well. So, look, man, thank you so much for joining us today on the What Is a Good Life podcast. I've just really enjoyed that. I've had dog treats left in my shirt pocket. My wife always tells me, why don't I put them in a bag? So I've had the smell of dog treats wafting in my face.
Nice.
But the experience with yourself has still left me with a very enjoyable one. So
Nice.
I look forward to carrying on and being in contact with
Thanks,
you as
Mark.
well, man.
And
I
please
think
come visit one day. I would love to have you here. You know,
I'd
come,
absolutely love to do that.
yeah, come and we'll have a chat right here, actually. And we can have a chat. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And keep it up. I love this.
Much appreciated.
All right.